Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back, Anastasia Cosmic Astrologer. I would like to introduce you to the wonderful Ariel Gutman. As I promised, she would be coming on my channel on the 7th of December, which is today. And here she is sitting with us with a beautiful Venus 5-pointed star crop circle behind her. We are going to be talking about the Venus Capricorn star point, which occurs in January, and we're going to talk about quite a few different things. So thank you, Ariel, for coming on again. I'm very, 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 very grateful to have you, and so is my audience, because my audience loves you and they've all been waiting for you as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I love being with you, and we've had a couple of great conversations already. I'm looking forward to another great one today.
Absolutely.
So thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Today's all about pleasure in a lot of ways, but we are going to also be talking about some content that, we're talking about Capricorn, right? Capricorn Venus star point. So we do need to address the different sort of signatures and characteristics, if you like. And, given everything that's going on in the world, it's not an easy time for anybody, I think. So we need to kind of look at, I suppose, all angles, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So
We will.
we
Yeah.
will. We'll do our best to bring
Well,
the
we'll try anyway. We'll offer what we can offer and see how that works.
just allow Venus to speak through, allow her to transmit her energy through the both of us, and see what it brings up. Yeah, yeah. So what I might do then, Ariel, is before you share, I'd just like to also show everybody your book again, because I might have some new viewers or people who don't know you. This is Ariel Gutman's book. It's called Venus Star Rising. I highly recommend you guys invest in this book if you really want to work with the Venus star points, whether that's personally or professionally, doesn't matter. This is a really great book to have. She covers a lot of territory, a lot of ground, history of Venus, the Venus star point, the evening star, the morning star, the differences between the two, the pentagram, there's just so much in this book, and I highly, highly recommend it. It's like my little Bible. And if you go to Ariel Gutman's website, which is, what's your website again? I'll put it in the link below anyway, but what is it again? Sophia?
Yeah, it's sophiavenus.com.
Yeah, beautiful. So if you guys go to Ariel's website, you can also download a PDF file that is an ephemeris of the Venus star points for many, 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 many years. I think, Ariel, you'll probably bring that up again today, won't you?
I'll show that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So shall I pass it over to you, and then we can just kind of flow from there?
Sure. So we're talking across the oceans and the continents today. I'm in Greece and you're in Australia, and you're in Melbourne, right?
Yes.
Or near Melbourne, somewhere in the vicinity.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful city. I was there in 1997. That was the last time I was there. It was the only time I was there, but I loved it. And I thought, whoa, I'm going to come back here someday.
I wanted to ask you because I wasn't sure if you'd ever been to Australia. So
yeah. There was a conference in early 97 from a couple of astrology schools that were there, and I had been invited to do mythic astrology and astrocartography.
Beautiful.
There, I didn't even know about the Venus star then.
Beautiful.
And so there was no, the Venus star really didn't come into my consciousness until later. There had been articles published about the pentagram that Venus makes in her orbital pattern. And those were interesting, very interesting. And there was, Daniel Giamario wrote about the Venus and Mars, but especially the Venus pentagram, and published a couple of articles in the Mountain Astrologer, I think in the late 90s. Also, about the same time, Erin Sullivan came out with a book called Retrograde Planets, and she has the Venus pentagram in that as well. That looks very similar to the one that Daniel Giamario published in his article. So they, I don't know if they were sharing information at the time or what, but they were onto it earlier actually than I was, but I thought, well, that's fascinating. But I hadn't really worked with it, and it wasn't until 2004, during the first Venus transit, that suddenly Venus is transmitting all this information to me. I suppose it was Venus, the intelligence of Venus, whatever. But I was really, at that time, earnestly studying the retrograde patterns of Venus and looking at the last one, the one before that, the one before that, the next one, et cetera. And there, voila, there is the 5-pointed star. And I went, whoa, this is huge, you know? And this is the star of our times. This is, and then noticing how very slowly that pattern moves, so that it's imprinting over a degree for a very long time, for a whole 8-year period, and sometimes even more, sometimes 12 years, sometimes 16 years, if you have a certain degree in there. Like today's, this cycle of Venus, the star point is going to be at 18 Capricorn, 18 plus. Well, the one 4 years ago in 2018 was also 18 plus Capricorn. So it's repeating. Capricorn is one of the signs I've joked about that likes to repeat the same degree 4 years later. It's as if the Saturnian part of Capricorn wants to make sure you get it.
Yeah.
You know, okay. It's like the parent saying, okay, I'm going to tell you, and now I'm going to say this again. So you really get it.
That's very interesting. I can relate to that very personally, because the Capricorn Venus star point is conjunct my Mars, and has been, you know, for the last quite a few years. So yeah, I can certainly relate to lessons around, Mars and relationships, Venus, you know, all that sort of stuff. And and the last 3 months particularly, I've had a lot of people from my past come back into my life. But I equate that also to transiting Pluto right next to my Mars and in the 12th. So Pluto, Venus, Mars are all having a bit of a party in my 12th house.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. And it's intense, it doesn't even cover it. Yeah.
I would say. Yeah. That's an understatement. It's been intense. It's been.
It has. But I
this is the stuff movies are made of, though. You should write a script about it.
Totally right. I mean, it's just, a lot of the stuff that has come up has blown my mind. It's incomprehensible, actually. But I like what you just said about, it seems to be that the Capricorn star can repeat the same degree. And I like that, because you're right. Saturn is so, it's the teacher, you know, it's the parent, the father, the teacher, the disciplinarian. So when it comes to Saturn material in our life, which is the backbone, the entire structure of our consciousness, really, on that, you know, material, practical level, how we structure and organize our entire life. So, you know, all the lessons that we weave through that, there's so much to learn, right? And develop and grow. So I can see why that would happen, even just from that symbolic sort of level. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good. Yeah, I'm noticing some repeats in the 2018 cycle in my own life, as well as out there in the world. The difference is the 2018 was pre-pandemic, and this one is still in the thick of the pandemic. Don't even want to say post-pandemic, but it's in the pandemic. But I think a lot of the laws that were being enacted back in 2018, or the kind of leadership we had, was almost like a preview of coming attractions in terms of the weight of and the heaviness of the Saturn ruled Capricorn, Pluto in Capricorn period we're in. But I want to say that the Venus star point, yes, we've had a lot of heavy Capricorn in the last few years. We've had Pluto there and Saturn in the conjunction in 2020. We had the Venus star point in 2018. Pluto's been there since 2008. Jupiter was there that whole year of 2020 when nobody could fly, nobody could go anywhere, nobody could do anything. Everybody was in partial lockdown or complete lockdown. Kids couldn't even go to school. You know, there was a lot going on with that in the severity of the Capricorn era. But I think what the Venus star point can offer to any sign or to any planet that it's contacting is a sense of lightness or joy or relief, or there's a way out of this. There, you know, because it's Venus.
Yeah.
It's a Venus Sun conjunction. It's shining light from the sun. It's shining love from Venus. It's beaming its energy to the earth. And so in some ways, we're going to bring, you know, we're going to make lemonade out of all these lemons, and it's going to be a delicious brew. Even if it's complicated. It's complicated.
Yeah. And I guess also, you know, the other thing about Capricorn and Saturn is time, isn't it? You know, things take time, especially when you're talking about Capricorn and Saturn, you know, the Lord of time, Chronos, right? So,
right.
Yeah, so we've been in this pandemic situation, you know, as you said, since, you know, the last couple of years. And so it's just taking time, you know, for things to shift and change. And I think now stepping into, you know, the next Venus Capricorn star point, I think for me, the most interesting sense I get about it is the conjunction she forms to Pluto because of the close proximity. Because when she goes retrograde, they're 1 degree apart, Pluto and Venus. And so, you know, as you are very well aware, you know, when Venus goes retrograde, she goes into the underworld, right? To transform, as it were.
Yeah.
So,
well, metaphorically, it's the underworld. What she really does is she disappears from our view. Yeah. She goes behind the sun. You know, pretty soon we've been seeing her in the evening sky all summer long, all through the fall. Even now, she's so bright. She's like at her brightest this past week, dazzling in the evening sky. And, you know, she's beautiful to behold, whether you watch her, whether you observe her in the evening or in the morning. But what literally happens when she's about to go retrograde, or when she's about to make a star point with the sun, is because the star point is the cazimi of Venus and the sun, or the conjunction, for those who don't know the term cazimi. And that means in the heart of the sun. And of course, any planet in the heart of the sun isn't going to be seen. It's going to be invisible because the sun is too bright. So she goes behind the sun. I like to think of the time that she's invisible to us on Earth is when she is taking time to do her own thing. And I've come to realize that a Venus retrograde, a lot of people ask me, what does it mean I have Venus retrograde in my chart? I've come to realize in working with this star point and this Venus cycle over these past, 17 years now, is that it's a very important time in her cycle. Every planet has their own cycle. We all need periods of rest, rejuvenation, recharge. It's another rewords for the retrograde. Yeah. Different than Mercury retrograde. It's not like, I wouldn't say, oh no, don't make any important decisions or sign contracts or whatever. That's a Mercury kind of thing. And even that's a little speculative, yes. When you think about what Mercury's really doing as well. But she kind of goes off the ecliptic. She doesn't stay in her normal, she's not just going backwards, she's going in a dance. If you really see an animated video from NASA or from any space program about what the Venus orbit is doing, She's going off. She's behind the sun. You can't see her. She's going off path, off track. So she's unpredictable. She's doing her own thing. She's a little wild, and she's a little bit like, don't call on me now. If we think of in the ancient times, all the people going to the Venus temples to worship and pray for their love and to please bring me my true love, and to leave offerings at her feet and so forth. And this, according to the ancients, she would provide. Well, she's saying now, hey, time off. I'm taking time for myself. I'm doing my own thing. And now it's time for you to take care of yourself and to do your own thing too. So I see it. I see the 40-day Venus retrograde cycle as a very important spiritual time for us to go within. And a lot of religious traditions have a 40-day practice where, whether it's Lent or something similar to that, where they're giving some kind of pleasure of the material world up, for God. But in this context, I wouldn't say it has to be, that rigid. I would say it just has to be pulling back from certain things in the material world, even your schedule. I think Capricorn has to do with time, and Saturn being the planet we associate with time, and the idea of giving yourself some time off. I am not taking the whole 40 days off of my schedule, but I'm taking a good part of it, 23 days or something I'm taking off. And this is something I actually do like to do. And the last retrograde was the Gemini retrograde of 2020. And I had advised people to take a break from social media and all the conversations and all the arguments and all the conversations that were going on that were just making people crazy. And a lot of people wrote me and thanked me for suggesting that, So this time I would say, take some time off your schedule, or put something else in your schedule that brings you joy, that you want to do. It's holiday time also coming up, and everybody's going to be in a somewhat celebratory mood, even if it's a dark period. Overall, we're going to have a little light there. And for us in the north, anyway, the sun is coming back, so we're happy. And for you, it's summer, so we'll take some joy out of that.
Absolutely. And we have to really, I mean, just for our own well-being, and our own heart sort of centered connection and fulfillment, because there's always something going on in the world of duality, isn't there? I mean, admittedly, at the moment, it's fairly cataclysmic and, extremely intense. There's no two ways about that. But we can still find moments where we can actually, enjoy something, or take some rest, or just completely tune out, and if we don't do that at these times, we'll just find ourselves getting sick, or just being drained, or being overwhelmed. So I agree with you. When Venus goes retrograde, it is, I mean, there's a lot of different ways we could look at it, really, but it is a time where we need to kind of just go within, and perhaps go closer to that heart center as well, because the Venus star points, as you say, at the core, at the absolute core, they are about enabling us to feel more deeply, right? To feel more love, or more joy, or more happiness, or sometimes it's not even joy and happiness. Sometimes it's just feeling really difficult feelings because of difficult circumstances, right? Such as the loss of a loved one. But, there's an incredibly intense feeling that rises out of that is ultimately healing and transformative. It's just about how we can embrace that journey, Yeah.
Yeah. And, the thing is, you don't want to feel burnt out at the end of the year. You want to, December 19th I think is the day that Venus goes retrograde. And for most of the world, 19th or 20th, somewhere around there. And so that's right around the solstice.
Yes.
And so celebrate the solstice in a way that honors the times that we really are going through. I think when you mention the fact that Pluto is there, I have to say that whenever Pluto is looming large with another planet or a star point, the idea of death and destruction is in the air, you know, kind of the scent of death. And it's in a really large way, a collective way right now, because people are dying every day of the pandemic. In other times, it might have been through wars, it might have been through invasions of one country to another, it might have been through natural disasters, earthquakes, etc. But we are dealing with the idea of Pluto, that nothing is impermanent. You know, things are, nothing is permanent, is what I mean.
Yeah.
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 Everything is impermanent, and that we have to honor the time we have. You know, I think it's important to pay attention to. Sometimes we're needing to pay more attention to making good use of our time as well.
That's a really good point, actually. And I was thinking about that relative to just Capricorn, the VSP in Capricorn, you know, connecting to structure, parents. I'm just looking at some notes I made: teachers, governments, corporations, society, authority, you know, traditions, laws, etc. And you've got in your book ancestral voices from the past. I really like that comment, so I've noted it in my notes here. And the other thing about Capricorn as well, because it corresponds to time and space as we know it here on the 3D earthly reality, it then also naturally just connects us to, you know, the road of maturity, right? You know, the road of development and maturity, growing up, aging, you know, all those sorts of things, depending where we are in our own sort of biological clock, if you like, you know. And so it is about honoring time and respecting time. And I think Saturn gets bashed quite a lot because it is a very hard, difficult energy. But in medieval astrology, Saturn was the magician, you know. In esoteric astrology, we have the sea goat, you know, as opposed to the mountain goat. So there's incredible wisdom and I don't know if I'd use the word gifts necessarily, because gifts are Venus, but the wisdom that we can attain through the lessons and time that it takes to learn things through Saturn, so that's it. It's really about respecting, you know, the time that we have, you know, here, you know, in our relationships with whatever, right? Because we do take things
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah.
And to that point, I would add that it's one way I used to describe Saturn is Saturn transit, Saturn cycles, etc., was that it gives you wisdom because it teaches you through experience. And book learning and education and intellectual high IQs actually don't mean a thing in Saturn's realm, because what Saturn's looking for is something practical and experience along the way. And experience can only be obtained through time and through the aging, you know, aging. When we're young, we don't have wisdom. We might have a lot of great intellect, but as we grow and have gone through life's trials and tribulations and joys and sorrows and so forth, we have gained a lot of wisdom and understanding of time, life cycles, ourselves, you know, and connection to our soul. And basically, I think that Saturn is there for a deeper, you know, the deeper meaning of all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of slides today to show on what you mentioned about ancestry and family lineage, because that's another Capricorn thing. And it really is the voices of the ancestors. Anybody who's working with family constellation work or going into you know, it's not like I haven't done a family genealogy myself, but I know a lot of people that have done it and get a lot from that. But I feel like I know that when I do get it, it's going to reveal to me things that I feel I already know
Yeah. Yeah.
about my lineage, especially this connection to Greece, and that I'm, you know,
Yeah.
probably somehow wound up here a long time ago, and here I am again. But
Yeah.
so I feel like I am living my life during these Capricorn star point years,
Yeah.
you know, touching base with the ancestors, and not even my own family line, but the idea that astrology itself teaches about the planets, which also had a connection to the gods and were somehow at one point somewhat interchangeable, not totally, but somewhat. And so when you look at the Greek pantheon of the family tree, and when I work with mythic astrology in people's charts, I look at the family lineage, the family line, like Athena being the daughter of Zeus,
Mm.
and so forth, you know, things like that.
Mm.
Um, and how, and Hermes and Apollo being brothers,
Mm.
and uh, just just different things, Persephone and Demeter and the mother-daughter relationship, you know, things like that. So I often pick those pieces out, and that myth that was put forth so many, you know, thousands of years ago as an archetype still are alive and
Mm.
present in people's charts today, in people's lives today, if they have those planetary connections, you know.
100%. 100%. I
Yeah.
see it over and over and over again with people that I work with. I had a girl email me today wanting a reading. Her name is Athena. That's all I'll say, just that first name, because there could be millions of Athenas. And I thought
Yeah.
to myself, intuitively, I
Here
thought,
in Greece, there are.
yes, exactly. And she's not in Greece, by the way. But anyway, I thought to myself intuitively, this girl must have a strong Pallas Athena in her chart. So as soon as I plugged in her details, there it was. She had a Venus Pallas Athena conjunction, and her name is Athena. So these, you know, we are living, breathing the archetypes, you know, as a human
Yeah.
family and individually and so forth. I just want to ask you one question before you bring up the slides, and I just wondered what you think about this. I was thinking about the Venus Capricorn star point and the polarity being Cancer, right? And I mean, when I work with charts or, you know, archetypes, whatever, I always have in my mind the, you know, the polar opposite, right? Because you can't separate them. They're each other's shadow, whatever term you want to use. So relative to what you were saying before about when Venus goes retrograde, it is a time to take a step back, maybe to think about, rethink your schedule in a different way because it is Capricorn, things like that, put more Venus sort of things into play. Because it's Capricorn-cancer, which is the parental access, that's one level, but on another level, it's also Cancer. I see it as our inner private world, the soul life, right? And Capricorn, very simply put, and Capricorn being, you know, our external self, right? And so this Venus Capricorn star point, you know, as Venus goes retrograde, she's also taking us into the that energy, right, of Cancer Capricorn together. So it is about attending to the soul, you know, and security. That's another word that came up for me. I thought this is a lot, very much connected to security, both inner and external. And think about it from the backdrop of the narrative, you know, of what's going on in the world. People's inner and external security has been really shaken up, right? So
Totally, totally. And that is such a good point.
yeah.
I have observed in the Capricorn years of Pluto and Capricorn, and more recently, you know, all these other planets and the stars coming through, the Venus star coming through. It's almost as if Capricorn in some ways has been, the rules and the laws and the conditions of the world have been anti-family, separating families. so many migrants looking for homes and not finding homes. There's a refugee migrant problem all around the world right now where countries will not accept them. Pope Francis just visited Greece and Cyprus. And in Cyprus, he talked about the tragedy of the migrants, that their lives today are very similar to those who were in concentration camps. And their lives are terrible, and that the world needs to pay more attention to them. The pandemic, it was almost, it was good and not so good for families. It was separating us from loved ones far away because we couldn't get to see them. And the elderly were dying in nursing homes without even having a funeral, without even having a relative coming to touch them or see them on their last breath. It was very painful for me to hear and watch those things happening. I couldn't imagine dying that way. And you know, just the idea that we're not giving shelter, we're not giving safety, we're not going out of our way. I say the laws of the land, the conditions that exist right now are not helping people in that way as much. So, and it hasn't been, you know, I mean, certainly for children staying at home and homeschooling, it's been okay. And people not going to work during the pandemic, that there was more of a sense of, okay, you're all together now, your nuclear family, you're all together more than you were before. So that gave a little help in bringing that, you know, those components together. But it was also very hard on the families, you know, not having, not the parents not really being able to work effectively, and also, you know, monitor the children and their lessons and their schooling and everything. I had a client the other day whose major question was about schooling, homeschooling, or going to school, whether she's going to risk having her children have to go through all the vaccination processes over and over again to attend school in person, or whether she's going to have to homeschool them, which she's okay with, but it would mean her giving up her job and a serious cut in income to do that. So there's a lot of conditions right now that are not being addressed. People are getting sick from other reasons. They don't have beds in hospitals in some cases for these people to go into because of so many being occupied by COVID. And there are, the Cancer Capricorn thing is really important to think about during this time. And the lack of Cancerian energy, I think the almost the opposite, you know, so much on the Capricorn, on the making the rules, making the laws, making the
at the cost,
coming up with,
at the cost of everything else, you know, at the cost of people's well-being, sanity, you know, connection to family. Do you know that we have had more deaths here in this country by kids suiciding than we have of COVID? That's a fact.
I didn't know that. No.
That's a very harsh fact and truth. So, you know, there's different versions of things going on around the world, but I mean, in Melbourne, we've had the most severe lockdowns from the entire globe. It's sort of renowned. Melbourne has become so famous at the moment because of the severity of what it's gone through. No other state in this country has been as strict as it's been here. Most of the suicides have occurred here in Melbourne. There's tons of them. Young kids, teenagers. Really sad. Yeah.
That is heartbreaking. Yeah.
And the government just not acknowledging, not caring, just doing that really lower, what I would consider a more personality, ego-based, if you like, Saturn sort of expression, you know, about control, rules. No, this is the rule. This is how you have to do it. You can't go outside of that rule, etc., etc. And Australia, of course, is a Capricorn country. It's got a Sun-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn in its national chart. So this is a very Capricorn-Saturn country anyway. So, yeah.
Well,
Yeah, it's
one
a
thing
bit
I
heavy.
will say that is not easy to live with. I'm sure it's not easy for me to even hear about, but
No.
I will say that as astrologers, we we have the advantage as astrologers of seeing that when things are happening out there, those types of things, we can just instantly easily relate it to the planetary conditions that are happening with how the planets are um, you know, forming aspects and going through transits with one another and so forth. And so we always astrologically we're like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. The astrologer says, yeah, that makes sense. Of course, I know why that's happening. But the other part of us um, is like, what's going on? Why is this happening? And
Mm,
for, 40, more than 4 decades now, I've been saying, I'm really glad I know astrology. I certainly understand why these things are happening. It
mm,
doesn't make them better or
easier.
easier to endure, but at least we know, okay, there's a reason these things are happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a good point because when I think one of the most difficult things in life for any human is to be going through some kind of um, suffering or pain and not having any understanding or meaning, and that's what astrology does, doesn't it? It gives us meaning, gives us the bigger picture, right? So, but I'm really excited about the uh, Scorpio star point going into Libra next year. I can't wait, and I'm hoping you're going to come back and we can talk about that because I've already thought about so many things around that because it's happening so close to Pluto transitioning into Aquarius, Libra, Aquarius, air signs, both to do with fairness, equality, justice, etc., etc. So I think that's going to be a really important, obvious shift, actually. Yeah, and I think
Mhm.
this Venus Capricorn star point is kind of finishing some things off, as it were. But at the same time, it's starting a new cycle, right? It's a new 8-year cycle.
Yeah.
So, um,
Well, the Capricorn one now, yeah.
hmm,
Mhm. Yeah. We're in the 8-year cycle. So in early January, when the star point happens, which is really the Cazimi, the conjunction of Venus and the Sun, she ends her last 8 years. So
hmm,
people could think back about what exactly were you doing in December of 2013 and January of 2014, because that's when this period began. This star point period began its cycle 8 years ago.
hmm.
And now it's coming to a close. So, what is coming to a close in our life now that was opening back then? And it doesn't really have to be a close. It can be the next level up, the spiral, the next level up.
I'm glad you
Um,
mentioned that
yeah.
actually, because that's a really important point. Because I think people will have a tendency to think, well, it's finishing one cycle, starting another, but it can be that. And like you just said, it can be you could have been working on quite a few different things, or a couple of things, or even one thing for the last 8 years, and now it's ready to go, as you said, up the spiral, right, to the next level. Yeah,
To
and
the
that's
next level. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Just like Saturn squares and returns, they don't always end things. It is the end of a cycle. It is the beginning of a new one, but sometimes people's lives look the same afterwards, but they tend to resonate with, if they're having a Saturn return at the time, they certainly are thinking about new things. What do I want to change up about my current life pattern? What do I want to make different? What do I want to introduce to it that hasn't been there before? And what can I say goodbye to from before? So,
Mm-hmm.
we're really wrapping up this last 8 years, so to speak.
Absolutely. And I think the goodbye part is going to be a pretty significant point for a lot of people because of Pluto, and Pluto
Yeah,
corresponds to endings and, transformations, deaths, death in the literal or, metaphorically speaking. So yeah, we
right.
can't deny the presence of Pluto. I've learned that very personally in my life, when Pluto is there, it's there. You just cannot deny. But I would say the same for Venus as well, from that real, from the Venus love heart center, right? From you can't, I mean, Venus
Mhm.
is the principle of attraction, you know, so she draws and attracts love and beauty, and that's undeniable as well. It's just a different energy.
Right, exactly, exactly. But you know, as I said before, Venus empowers a planet or a sign. It emphasizes it. Venus's um, energy is about um, giving you what you want, bringing to you that which you desire. And so when we think of what does Capricorn want, what does Pluto want, you
Mm,
know, what does Saturn want? Sometimes those are not things that we think we want,
mm,
but Venus is empowering those energies as well and saying, okay, I'm going to give this to you. I
mm,
had done back in 2018 when it was exactly conjunct Pluto, the star point was 18 Capricorn and Pluto was also at 18 Capricorn. I was looking back through history, modern history, and all the star point periods of many in the 20th century, late 20th century, early 21st century. And the thing that I found to correlate with the star point connecting to Pluto, no matter what sign it was in, it could have been in other signs, Sagittarius or Scorpio or wherever, or Gemini Sag opposition, was that it brought up a threat in the world of annihilation
mm,
by introducing a scare of, oh, so and so has nuclear weapons,
mm,
so and so is doing nuclear testing,
mm,
so and so is threatening to invade such and such.
mm,
And so there was a repetitive theme of Pluto,
mm,
which, you know, the story of Pluto, the mythology of Pluto is the seizing,
mm,
you know, coming up from the underworld, coming up from the dark spaces that we're not even aware of, that we're not even seeing because we're out in the field picking flowers. And suddenly
mm,
Pluto comes up and
mm.
seizes little Persephone and takes her screaming to the underworld
Yeah.
before she has any feelings about that. I mean, these are some of the things that happened during the Holocaust. These are some of the things that are happening with migrants right now. You know, that, you know, you're sleeping in your bed one night and safe and dreaming and so forth. And the next day, you know, all of a sudden, you know, your house is being bombed, or you're being forced out, or you're being, there's this terrifying threat of nuclear war happening, you know, that's in the air. And
Mm,
so I thought in 2018 that there would be some nuclear threats. At the beginning of the year, Iran was definitely massing nuclear weapons, and there was the threat, and it was talked about quite a bit in the media, and then it sort of just died down.
mm,
It was an evening star, Capricorn, somehow, maybe behind the scenes, some sort of um, um, peace process, you know, was enacted, or some sort of negotiation might have helped.
mm,
I think the more difficult times are the morning star, when Venus is closest to the Earth, as she is now, you know,
mm.
coming into the morning star. So
So
anyway.
are you saying that the morning star is in itself more difficult than the evening star?
Well, I think because how the ancients looked at the morning star was that it's retrograde, it's closest to the earth, it has more influence on the earth, and they called it the warrior goddess when it emerged from its retrograde and came into the morning sky. And, you know, some of the ancient mythologies, the Maya, for instance, were great lovers and watchers of the Venus cycle, and they were the ones, aside from, you know, the Greeks and other cultures as well. I don't know all of them, but there are several ancient cultures. But I know the Maya were very reverent and observational about Venus, and they had a whole temple dedicated at Uxmal to Venus and tracked it quite rigorously. Um, and they were aware of the 5 seasonal risings, as they called it, of Venus.
Mm,
But they called the morning star. They had a whole myth about when Venus sets in the last setting of Venus in the evening sky, the last visibility of Venus in the evening sky, when she was in her lover form. She goes underground or behind the sun. We can't see her. And when she comes back out, she's, a raging warrior, holding up bloody swords and so forth. So that was the time that they sent their armies marching, was during the morning star phase, or the just past the retrograde. So morning stars have more of a fierce energy about them. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this kind of energy about them. And also there's a shift going on, from like a yin energy of the evening star to a yang energy of the morning star. The morning star is more embodied. We have to really pay attention more to our body and to what's going on with, the here and now, and how we become present, how we become embodied. Whereas the evening star is a little bit more like, it's a cerebral kind of energy. We're dreaming, we're creating, we're fantasizing, we're writing poetry, we're writing, we're relating to, we're engaging with people, etc. Well, we're coming out of that period right now. We just had the Aries evening star that lasted for 9 months. I wrote about this in my blog, and people can read that blog at my website, but I felt like the Aries star point that we just came out of was governed by Mars, and Mars was direct and unimpeded. It went through 6 signs during this time of the Aries star point. So it was going forward. It was moving forward. It was making progress. We were doing things, making plans, getting things done. But now we're shifting into the morning star, governed by Saturn in Capricorn, and Saturn in Aquarius. It's a Capricorn star governed by Saturn, who is in Aquarius.
Correct. Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say, I think. Yeah. And but Saturn won't be moving much. It's moving through, 1/3 of the sign of Aquarius during 2022. It's slower. It's not going to be, it'll be retrograde for 5 months of the year. How much will we get movement forward? We have plans, we have ideals that we want to go for, but will we actually make it through to all the things that we're planning and thinking of? I think it's going to be a little bit more quite a bit more restrictive, actually.
Yeah.
All the way around, with these laws, new laws emerging, and new measures of controlling people, and our ability to just live the way we really, the full idea of freedom that we want to have, because Aquarius is also a sign that rules humanity.
Exactly.
And it's all about the whole human family. It's about how do we, how much control is going to be imposed upon humanity. And I have said this before, but I really see it coming. I had no idea what form it would take. Astrology is so archetypal. You see, this is going to probably happen, but you don't know how. Like so many astrologers spoke about 2020 and said, oh my goodness, this looks like a disaster, but we didn't really know exactly how it was going to take place. And it was the pandemic that sort of made all the predictions about 2020 come true, without using the word pandemic or even knowing that it was a pandemic that was going to be the cause of it. But I think with Saturn in Aquarius these 2 years, and then immediately followed by Pluto going into Aquarius, the sign of humanity, that human rights, this is a big issue now, the idea of human rights and what are human rights. And so, we're in for some big changes, because we are matching 250 years ago the
Mm,
Venus star point of the exact same time, which
mm,
is also the Pluto return for America.
mhm,
It's also on the eve of the French Revolution
mm,
and on the eve of the discovery of Uranus.
mm.
Um, so I think we're completing a bigger cycle
We
right
are,
now.
we are, absolutely. And just one point to connect to that, I realized today that if you look at the discovery chart for Pluto, right, Pluto was discovered in Cancer. So Pluto being in Capricorn, they're opposite. I mean, Pluto's
Yes,
opposite himself, if you like, right? So I think
right.
that's an important point, actually, relative to what's going on in the world. And it is that Capricorn-Cancer axis. And you think about what was happening in the 1930s, it was pretty stark, what was going on back then.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's pretty stark at the moment as well. So, yeah, I just thought that was an interesting kind of part of the picture relative to larger cycles of things going on in terms of
Mm-hmm.
what's happening at the moment. Yeah. Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, shall we get to our chart examples? Because I
Yeah.
see our
Yeah.
time is really
Yeah.
coming. Yeah,
Go for it. Do you want to bring up anything? Do you have any slides you'd like to share?
I have slides, but I think for some reason, making slides is a good exercise for me because it helps me think about what I actually want to talk about. And I think I may have already talked about what's in most of my slides.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no,
But
that's
I will put them out anyway so that you can
maybe
actually see them.
maybe just
Just
a
I
picture of
whip
the
through a few of them. Shall I
yeah.
just whip through a few of them?
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe the Venus star pentagram, for example, the your PDF file as well, just for certain viewers that may not be familiar with that. So I'll just let you go for it.
Okay. I'll just kind of go through these pretty quickly because you can always come back to them and look at them later. And I've explained them more fully. I think in my last talk with you, some of these were
Yeah,
shown before.
yeah,
And, the basic formation of the Venus pentagram. And, really what it is it's the Earth Venus orbit. It's Earth and Venus going around the sun together. They move pretty much at the same speed, except for when Venus is retrograde and it moves much slower. But then when she comes out of retrograde and starts moving forward again, she starts picking up speed and surpasses the speed of the Earth at certain times in her cycle. And so what happens is instead of, how the sun goes around, the Earth goes around the sun in 1 year, one solar year, the Earth Venus cycle, when they connect, is about every 9.5 months. And so, about every 9.5 months, they're forming a star point. But it's every 18 months or so, twice that amount, 1.6 years actually, that Venus goes retrograde, which is what she's doing now, and completes that cycle. But this is what it looks like. This is astronomical computer generated graphic of what the Venus cycle with Earth really looks like going around the sun. And as you can see, it looks like a beautiful flower
yeah,
or even a rose unfolding with all its many petals. And the ancients called Venus the rose. And so are they called the rose a flower specifically related to Venus? I think all flowers are related to Venus. They all have the essence of Venus, but I think there's no flower that better suits the Venus star than the morning glory. This one is stunning. I just took this shot a couple of weeks ago, actually,
yeah.
here.
Wow.
And look at the star. It's just
I know.
blazing at
Yeah.
us, you know?
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it has that pentagram built into it. And if you go inside, it
Mm.
has another little pentagram. And then you go inside that and it has another little one. And it's like a
Oh,
fractal that never ends, you
right.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. So, we think of all flowers and things that decorate our life and stars. We hang up stars, we bring flowers in, we like spirals, seashells. Those are all Venus related objects because they really coincide with the Venus orbit.
Yeah.
So if you're bringing those items into your space, your personal space or your workspace, you're bringing Venusian energy into your field. So 2022, Venus begins the year kissing the sun while they're both in Capricorn. What kind of kiss would that be? A Capricorn kiss means getting some work done to meet the goals you've set for yourself.
Yeah.
Capricorn likes to excel by doing what it does best and finding a supreme sense of satisfaction with that. So basically, you would check the house that Capricorn occupies in your chart to see, well, where am I feeling that drive right now? Because Capricorn is like driving you to, push forward on that realm. And so in her retrograde, though, what's pretty unique, and we've talked about this already, in her retrograde, she will meet up with Pluto 3 times. So that's kind of an unusual, really, since Pluto's been in Capricorn, 2008, and since Venus has been in a morning star position in Capricorn, they have met up before during that cycle. So we are looking at, 8 years prior to now. And I think 8 years prior to that was before Pluto was in Capricorn. So, but the evening stars, we've had several years since 2008. We'll look at that table in a moment. I have it here.
Okay.
What I also wanted to say that I don't think I've mentioned yet is that the Venus star point at 18 to 19 degrees is 18 degrees is a really active point in the sky this year. There are so many planets going over 18 degrees. So another thing, if you know your chart and how to look up at the positions, is that there are going to be several things happening at 18 degrees. First, we're going to have the star point in early January. Then later on, Saturn turns direct at 18 Aquarius later in the year. Of course, Saturn is in authority for most of the year with the star point because of the rulership of Capricorn. And the nodes sit on 18 degrees Taurus Scorpio the first 10 days of August, crowned by Uranus at 18 Taurus for 3 months around the same time, late summer. So, wow, we have a lot of 18 degrees, activated. Taurus, Scorpio, Capricorn, Aquarius, and of course the normal planets that go through passing back and forth through 18 as they go on their cycle as well.
Okay, that's a very interesting point, actually. I hadn't looked at that, but yeah, that's good. That's good. I find that when you get repetitive degrees, whether it's in your own natal chart or whether it's in, you're looking at the next 12 months or whatever it is, when you get a repetition, that's usually quite critical, actually. It's quite important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's again another Saturn going boom, boom, pay attention.
Yeah. Oh God, I've got Saturn, transiting Saturn on my moon. I've had it all year, so that's a lot of joy, not? But it's been very, very valuable as well. I'm not going to bash Saturn.
Yeah.
He's a good teacher. It's been good, actually.
Boundaries.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the Capricorn star point is a relatively new star point in terms of, the historical cycles of the star points that are active right now. Most star points go through a sign, average 100 years.
Yeah.
Capricorn started only in 1986 as an evening star.
Yeah.
Now you can see every 4 years it alternates: 1990 morning, 94 evening, 98 morning, etc., till we come down to here. And what I was saying is Pluto went into Capricorn in 2008. So it's been with the Venus star somewhere in the Pluto cycle. And but that was at the beginning of Capricorn. The star point was towards the upper end of Capricorn, so they weren't actually meeting. But in the retrograde cycle, they were. I think in 2014, they met in the retrograde cycle. In 2018, Pluto was conjunct the Venus star point. And in 2022, really now at the end of 21, Venus does go retrograde conjunct Pluto right at, so it's wrapping itself, its retrograde cycle is wrapping itself into the Pluto cycle. They will meet 3 times. And then by 2026, Pluto will be out of Capricorn. Evening star will happen as an evening star superior conjunction. So we might get a lighter kind of Capricorn star of the children that are being born after 2026. I think this is probably the heaviest period we've been in so far with that condition. And as we said before, this 2022 degree is at the same exact degree as the 2018 degree. The difference is that was an evening star. This is a morning star.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I've been thinking a lot about the Pluto influence. I guess for me, I really resonate with Pluto so much because it's opposite my Venus, my natal Venus anyway. So Pluto's a pretty prominent planet in my chart. And so when I see Pluto Venus coming together in a transit, my eyes just light up. I'm very intrigued and interested. I want to really get into that. And here it is, sort of very, very close as Venus goes retrograde, and Pluto, they're only a degree apart, on the 19th or 20th of December, as you said. So Venus's journey into, the underworld and then being reborn from the evening to the morning star, she does that with Pluto's energy. She's taking that energy in there with her. So I guess,
and isn't it like a double whammy, because Venus does that when she disappears, like you're saying, and now with Pluto, it's even more so. Yeah,
exactly. It's a double signature, and that's got to be important. That's got to be really important. And I guess, like you said, though, people should be observing, well, where this happens in their own birth chart, right? Because certainly if you've got it, if you've got the Pluto Venus transit, going over some personal planets, especially, that's going to trigger, that's going to activate, it's going to energize that house, that area of life, those planets, right? And then you've got, of course, just the symbolism of Venus, all the things that Venus represents, of course, and then all the things that Pluto represents. But
right.
I think because of the nature of reality and the heavy sort of conditions that are upon us collectively, and, having to have to be sort of perhaps not, there's still travel restrictions in certain ways in certain countries, they're sort of half closing our borders off here in Australia again, for instance, at the moment. And so it's sort of, everything's very up in the air still. There's no real certainty and clarity of the direction.
Exactly. And I think, this closing of borders and restriction of travel has also a lot to do with the rulership of Saturn being an Aquarius, an air sign that's associated with air travel. And the square between Uranus and Saturn that's been going on for this whole time, that will continue into 2022, because Uranus basically wants to fly, but it's in an earth sign, kind of grounded, and Saturn wants more grounding, and it's in an air sign that wants to fly. So, and they're both squaring each other. So there's this, the whole time we've had these kind of restrictions about air travel has been during that square as well.
Yeah, yeah. And this month, in fact, we had the solar eclipse, total solar eclipse. We've got would you say that the energy of this Venus Capricorn star point is already within its realm of activation?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I I mean, you know how I bump it up to the next star point if the sun and Venus are already in the next sign. I mean, we're still in the Aries star point period, and I do have an example
Mm,
of, to show you involving that Aries energy that I thought about. But we're at the end of that Aries evening star. The sun won't go into Capricorn until 21 of December,
mm-hmm,
but Venus has been in Capricorn since November, or mid-November, early November, I think. And
mm,
so we have already had one component of that star, Venus herself, in Capricorn. So yeah,
mm,
once Venus or the sun, whoever precedes the entry into the next star point sign, I think we're starting to already feel the
yeah,
energy of that.
yeah.
Any babies born between December 21st and January 8th, I would, when the sun and Venus are both in Capricorn and
Mm,
Venus is already retrograde, moving towards the sun,
mm-hmm.
and the sun is moving towards Venus, they're moving to meet each other in when it's retrograde cazimi.
Yeah,
Um, you could consider them already a Capricorn star point rather than an Aries star point.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
And
very,
this is the PDF that you were mentioning before.
yeah,
I'm sorry,
yeah.
you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, I'm curious to see the example of the Aries, the Aries Venus star point. Yeah, curious to see what you've got there.
Okay, let's see where that is. Well, anyway, this is the Find Your Venus Star Point. It's a downloadable PDF at my website.
Mm,
And you can, what these dates show is, and what these lines show are the five, the five signs that it's in at any given time. If there's a gap there, it means it's, changing signs, or if there's an overlap, it's changing signs. It starts in the 1870s and it goes all the way up to I think 2050 or 2060, something like that.
mm-hmm,
So, but I always, again, look for the previous one before you were born,
mm-hmm,
unless the example I just gave, that Venus and Sun are both in the next sign, then,
mm.
you can bump it up to that. But this is a useful thing to have, to
It's
carry around with you on your phone. When you meet
absolutely,
people,
yeah,
it's sort of like you're talking to your friend and she's talking about her daughter and the situation going on with her daughter right now. And you're saying, oh, okay, let me look up her star point. Okay.
absolutely, absolutely.
I'll show this slide really quickly because Capricorn keywords
Uh-huh.
are kind of important.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have to go through each one of these, but I think for people watching this later,
Yeah, they can pause it and yeah.
and if somebody is doing work for you, whether it's, really meager work or, very big jobs, small or large, it doesn't matter.
Mm,
I think it's time to give them credit,
mm,
honor them, respect them, and even the work that we do. This is another feeling that will come forth on a Venus retrograde in Capricorn. You've been working at this job a long time. You've been working very hard, and you're not getting the credit you deserve.
mm,
And so the re-evaluation that goes on during a Venus retrograde cycle is,
mm,
man, I have never wanted to quit my job as much as I do now because I'm putting so much of myself into it and I don't feel like I'm valued at all. What I'm doing is valued. And so that's the time to either begin the conversation with the people at the workplace about, just what that's all about for you. And secondarily, if, you know, it's falling on deaf ears, as they say,
mm.
um, then it might be time for you to invest your time and energy somewhere else.
I had that happen at the midpoint at 2018, which is interesting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just occurred to me now as you were explaining that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
'Cause that exact thing happened. You know, I resigned from the consensus reality of professionalism with counseling, mental health work, etc. For pretty much for what you just said. You know, that's how I felt. I didn't feel valued enough there, and there were other things going on, and that was very close to my dad transcending the world as well. So there was a lot going on for me at that time. But it was that mid part of that cycle can be, you know, I think extremely important actually. Big shifts can occur
Mm-hmm.
in that mid cycle as well. Yeah.
Right. And it's okay that it occurred then, because it could occur, as you say, at either point of the cycle. I think the retrograde really kind of drives it in. But
Yeah.
the the fact is, the Sun and Venus are coming together, and really the conversation inwardly and outwardly is about values. And you
Yeah.
know, what do we value? How are we valued? How do we value ourselves?
Mm,
And with the Sun Venus, how do we value ourselves?
mm,
And when we say, well, they're not valuing me out there,
mm,
so I need something different. But the real question becomes, well, how have I been valuing myself?
exactly.
Um,
Mm,
Others aren't going to value us if we don't value ourselves. And
exactly.
that's something that people that are, um, you know, in their own business, working in their own way to build up a business, have uh, met that condition
Mm,
many times over, to realize that, you know, a lot of people, you know, they give their work away in the beginning because they think, oh, you know, I can't really charge too much for this. So
mm,
uh,
mm.
but as time goes on, you realize, hey, wait a minute, I've got the education, now I've got the experience, I've got the, you know, I've got the credentials, but it's not even that. It's not even that you have those things on the outside. It's how you feel about yourself on the inside, whether you feel you're
Exactly.
worth it.
Exactly. Yeah. And
And
that's
that,
what
I think, is
Venus.
the most important key of the Venus
Mm,
Sun Kazemi, is how do I feel about myself? And
yeah.
do I, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really beautiful sort of summary of what we can consider, you know, with the Venus Capricorn star point when we're thinking about our own, you know, how hard we've been working or what we've accomplished or where we're at, you know, with any of those things on a professional level, whether it's working for ourselves or others. It is really about taking that time to consider and really connect with your own worth, you know, just your own
Right.
value and your own worth. You know, it's so important because, like you said, I mean, if we can't have an authentic sense of self worth and value within ourselves, it's always going to be reflected in our relationships and our jobs and everything, really, isn't it? So,
Right.
yeah, it's the self-love
Exactly.
component, you know, the self-love, you know, not in that sort of narcissistic way, of course, but the authentic, genuine self-love and care that you would have for your heart, you know, for instance. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here's the thing about ancestry, lineage, the
Ah.
family tree, how it's all connected, how we're all connected, really. Uh, and maybe this is a time to investigate that during the coming retrograde period of Venus in Capricorn, is honoring the ancestors in some way. You
Mm,
know, it doesn't have to be an intentional genealogical
mm,
search, but it can certainly be, you know, something that you are feeling. And I just have to put a shout out today, because the day we're recording this is December 7th. And so it is, it's 5 years ago today, my mother passed. And exactly. So she was a Capricorn, um,
wow.
very strong Capricorn lady.
Mm,
But you know, I just want to, I'm remembering her today. And I thought it was interesting that um, that it was December 7th, because for her and her generation, that was a really important day. That was the day in history where Roosevelt, her favorite president of her time, said this is a day that will live in infamy, because it was the day that Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese. And so, in her generation, all of her brother, her husband, her all of her friends of that generation went and fought in World War II. And so they were all, I just felt like the day she passed on that day, Pearl Harbor Day, because my father had already passed years earlier, but I just felt like, all those people that were involved in that, all those souls were waiting on the other side to welcome her.
Wow, that's such a beautiful sort of vision, or vision, isn't it?
Yeah, it was actually a feeling I had. I just felt like, okay, this makes sense. There's divine timing in this, that it could have passed any day, because for the last 2 weeks before that, she was pretty much, at that place of she's going to go any minute now, we thought, but it was December 7th. So, I thought, okay, that's kind of interesting.
So that's a really significant, it's a really significant day for you today, obviously, right? I mean, and we're talking about the Capricorn Venus star point, and she was a Capricorn, and Capricorn to parents, and here we are talking about family trees and lineage, and I think it's a really beautiful journey to take, relative to exploring our own lineage, whether it's from our own personal family or, going way back further than that, as far as we can possibly go, I suppose. But there's something very sacred, I feel, about ancestral lines and ancestry exploration. There's something really sacred about that journey. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, we have the Olympian family tree as well, that astrologers, and I mentioned in earlier, that we look at, and this is something that I will not go into now, that's very complicated but it's, there's definitely a lot of energy and wisdom in this lineup, and how they're related and who they're related to and what the relationships are. And so if you're studying these, asteroids, or you're studying planetary family groupings and family lines and whatnot, this is a good thing to look at as well.
Yes, no, thank you for putting that up. That's going to be very useful for me, actually. I've seen a similar graph before, actually. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same, but I'm heavily into the asteroid goddesses, so this is great just to have that visual right there in front of me.
Good.
Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. Yeah.
And 4 years ago, when we had the 2018 Capricorn Star Point, the person of the year that is awarded by Time Magazine was the women who broke the silence on the Me Too movement. And that they are, and since then, we have been really kind of observing not only the Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter, but the empowerment of women and women in power. I remember writing a piece for the 2014 Venus Capricorn Star Point that was about showing how many executives and CEOs of major companies had become women now then. And so I think it's also continuing to strengthen women. I think the Aries Star Point has done that through the whole course of the Aries Star Point, but Capricorn as well, bringing women into power. So January 22. And this is just something I wanted to share about. Saturn is not just a crotchety old man. Saturn can be a really fine teacher, somebody who
Mm,
I think, and I thought about this the other day, you can become highly skilled at anything in life if you've had a good teacher.
mm, yes.
Even if you don't have the natural talent to do it, if you've had a good teacher, you can do it. And these are examples of teachers
Mm,
that are, well, especially, from modern culture, from, what would the Earth Mother say?
mm, mm,
Obi-Wan Kenobi, what would he say? Our
mm,
Gandalf, our Yoda,
mm.
they'd say, do the right thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cute. I love that. That's really cute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's get into our charts
Mm.
because here's one that, okay, here's one I wanted to show because this is basically a repeat of 2018. A little girl carrying a heavy bag of groceries. And I think we're probably asking our children to carry much greater loads these days than ever before.
Mm.
Children are growing up really fast, and it's because they have more responsibilities. They don't get to stretch their childhood into,
Mm.
um, you know, into this sort of relaxed, gentle, easy time periods and play periods that they've had
Mm.
before. But also, little kids now are very authoritarian under this Saturn
Mm.
ruled Capricorn star point. You see, little kids these days are pretty much ruling the families. They are telling the parents, the parents are making their whole schedules around the kids.
Yeah.
Often the grandparents are, everybody, family get-togethers. I've been seeing this happen for some years now. It's like
Yeah.
all the whole family wants to get together. Okay, many factions from the family. Okay, well, we'll see what the children want to do.
Mm. Mm.
Where it used to be the children were taken along
Yes.
to what the parents wanted to do, and they were coming along.
Yeah.
Now it's, well, what do the children want to do? And the parents are coming along.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very different world. These generations are very, very different in so many different ways. I can think of so many examples similar to what you just said. So, but there's many layers to that too. I mean, some of these young souls that are coming in are very, very advanced, in particular ways as well. Some of them bring in a lot of wisdom. Some of them are just all about, self-entitlement as well. I recognize that. You can see that as well. But the example that I hopefully, if we've got time for me to bring it in, which is Paris Jackson. She's only 23 years of age, so she's not a little kid, but she's a very young person. But she's got a Capricorn Venus star point, and she's had to grow up extremely fast, since her father's death. She's her like the amount of things that she's compacted in her life over a 10-year period is mind-boggling, just what she has achieved and done. And her Capricorn Venus star point is in the 10th house as well. So yeah, it is very much about, it's a true Capricorn, VSP in the Capricorn house, in Capricorn itself. So, but she's got a lot of wisdom, this young woman. If you hear some of the things she does crazy things as well. She's acted out and done all the crazy teenage, sort of acting out things, of course, but
Right.
she's got this wisdom about her, this wisdom that's not typical of a young person. And I attribute that to her Venus star point in Capricorn. And also she's got a Jupiter in Pisces on the south node. I think she's brought in a lot of wisdom from the past as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but she's a good example of a young person who's really felt that the heaviness the burdens of what she's had to carry since her father's death, which has meant a lot of different things. You know, she's tried to commit suicide so many times. It's a really full-on story, her life, you know. But yeah, I
Do
just
you have her chart to
yeah,
share?
yeah, and I've got her secondary progress chart as well. Just when her father died is just mind-boggling, you know, what lined up in that chart. But yes, I've got it all there. So if we've got
Okay,
time, yeah, if we've got time, I'll
okay.
put it up.
I'm going to show you, let's see, I think it's this chart. Here it is. Um, you
Mm,
know what? Okay, let's go back to, okay, kind of what I wanted. This is something I wanted to show first.
mm,
If you're an Aquarius star point,
mm,
which a lot of people alive are,
mm.
because the Aquarius star point lasted from 1890 to 1980, the mid 1980s. So there's a lot of people on the planet that are Aquarius star points.
Yeah.
And if you are an Aquarius star point, Capricorn is a continuation
Uh-huh.
of the Aquarius. So this is your cycle. If you're an
Yeah.
Aquarius morning star,
Mhm.
this Venus cycle is an 8-year return cycle for you.
Mm.
If you're an Aquarius evening star, it's still your it's the reverse. It's the evening star, morning star to your evening star, but it's still connected. So
Mhm.
you want to pay particular attention to this period because it's still
Mm.
within the realm of your star point period, okay, of your natal condition. More related to the 8-year return, but somewhat related to the 4-year return as well. So I wanted to I was looking, we don't have that many adult Capricorn star points yet because it just started in 1986. So, you
Yeah.
know, they're just in their 30s now. They're just the oldest ones are just in their mid 30s
Yeah.
and going and so we don't have a lot of examples. So I was looking at the Aquarius star points too, since that we're not going to have that Aquarius star again for 150 years.
Mm.
And so this example is an Aquarius star point,
Mhm.
who's a morning star, who fits to this example. I don't know if you've heard of this actor, Alec
Oh, yes.
Baldwin.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, well, he also got very famous playing Trump on Saturday Night Live, a show that we have where he was mimicking Trump, and Trump didn't really like the way he was portraying him anyway. But I have always thought, even before he played Trump, that whenever I thought of Alec Baldwin, I didn't even know his star point or what it was involved with. But I always thought he was a little, really a feisty kind of a bully, almost a bully type energy. And he's an Aries sun,
Mm.
and his Mars is in Aquarius, pretty much opposite Uranus.
Mm.
Now we don't have a birth time for him. This is a noon chart, so
Mhm.
we can't really look at houses. We can't say Mars is in the 7th house here or Uranus is in the first, but
Okay.
we still have a Mars-Uranus opposition.
Yeah.
Well, guess what?
Hmm.
The the Venus star point at 8 degrees Aquarius
Mm.
is exactly, feeding right into that Uranus, which is boomeranging back to that Mars. And
Yeah.
so the star point itself kind of picks up that surly,
Mm.
macho kind of energy. And he's had some run-ins. I mean, he's a very successful actor and he's played his roles brilliantly, but he has a lot of talent in that field. But he also has had some run-ins in the past with his ex-wife and custody battles and some nasty things going on there.
Mm.
But you've probably heard that on a film set
Yeah.
in my home state, my home city of Santa Fe, New Mexico,
Yeah.
um, they were filming a Western, and the firearm he was using as a prop discharged, and it killed somebody. It
I
actually
know.
killed
I
and
know.
injured.
I was
It was a
shocked.
big
Yeah.
deal. And there's a big investigation going on now about why that gun was loaded to begin with.
Yeah.
But I thought,
How's
look
that
at
for Mars Uranus though? You know, that sudden unexpected, because Mars rules firearms, right? And
exactly.
you know, so that's
So
incredible.
that's it. This Mars-Uranus opposition that exists in his chart natally
Mm,
is going to always be, well, not always. It's going to be sometimes be activated by the conditions of transits or whatever.
mm,
And it's going to result in an explosive, sudden event that is going to cause, fire and alarm, the alarms bells ringing all around him.
yes.
Uh, and what was going on this year, 2021, look at this. Uranus was squaring his Mars from Taurus, squaring his Venus star point from Taurus, and in Taurus, squaring his Uranus. Saturn was in Aquarius, conjunct his VSP when this happened.
Uh-huh.
Saturn in Aquarius conjunct his Mars, and Saturn in Aquarius opposite Uranus. So that Uranus Saturn square that we were talking about before really erupted firsthand in his chart from a situation that was already potentially lying there waiting to be activated.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's incredible. I've been thinking about him a lot actually, and I hadn't looked at his chart. So this is a great example, a really great example, even without a, timed birth chart, right? Look at how many things
Right.
you can get out of that. It's amazing. But
I
I
know,
love,
and I don't really like using birth charts that are not timed because
Mm.
there's so much that you can't really dig into. But
yeah.
like you say, there's enough that you can dig into.
Oh, there is,
You know,
absolutely. Especially when you start adding the Venus star points to a chart, even without a birth time, you start to, you just start to get this layered, uh, layered kind of landscape, richness, different things coming through. Yeah, yeah.
so he is a morning star Aquarius, 8 degrees,
Hmm.
which means this is an 8-year return cycle of his Venus star that he's going into.
Right.
So, what would the conclusions be? Would Venus star point at this point be favoring him in terms of there's going to be an investigation? He's probably going to be on trial. There's a lot of things that are going to be happening, but will the Venus star save him, so to speak, from, being, having any culpability in this accident? I think chances are it could, it would, but maybe without the star point, it wouldn't. But we'll just have to see, because we don't know the houses. I think if we knew the houses, we could see more or less what was going on here. Like if it was in the 12th house or something like
Go to
that,
jail.
it might be secret forces operating behind the scenes that planted this on him or whatever. We
Exactly.
really don't know.
Yeah. So let's, I mean, without knowing that, do you feel that the Venus star point could be of help then?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay,
So,
that's
well, he'll get help. He'll definitely have help
yeah.
in,
Okay.
um, in protecting him. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, when he was asked about when he realized what had happened, he was pretty much in shock about it.
Hmm.
But who knows what else was going on again behind the scenes, because there were rumors that there were unhappy personnel. The crew had walked off just hours before this, and he is, like I said, a kind of a difficult, I would say, a difficult personality to
Hmm.
deal with. Mars opposite Uranus and the sun
Yeah.
in Aries, opposite a Libra full moon. He's a full moon person.
Yeah.
I don't know how well he
Mm.
was treating the other people on the set, or how
Mm.
much authority he really had. Those are things we won't know. We can't really know unless, we get an inside look from somebody about it. But
Mm.
um, nevertheless, and then Saturn, of course, is direct right now,
Mm. Mm.
and so it's going to be going over all the way up to 25 Aquarius, not quite at his Venus, but certainly going over his Chiron
Mm.
and over his Mars and on the Venus star point, as we speak. So we'll see. We'll see how that Saturn transit, and then of course Uranus is moving forward too, and still is going to activate that Mars, I think, one or two more times.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, I mean, without the Venus star point, it looks pretty stark, actually. The signatures of Mars, Chiron, Saturn, Uranus. They can be really challenging energies, particularly under those sorts of circumstances. Where you have an event like that take place. So yeah, I really hope the Venus star point does help him out, especially if he really truly wasn't responsible. And as far as I understand from what he has said, at least, he wasn't. It wasn't
Right.
his fault. That the lady that died was a friend of his. She was a good
Yeah.
friend of his as well. I mean, how traumatic would that be, right? To
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is, who would plant that bullet in the prop and, try to point the finger at him, who was behind the scenes trying to do that and why. And, and I think it has to do, because this chart, as I look at it, it has, as we've said, a lot of Martian energy in it. Look at all this Scorpio, look at all this Aries, but
Mhm.
it's also got a fair amount of Venus energy. There's a Libra moon. There's a lot of Taurus here, the South Node in Taurus,
True.
with Mercury. So I think
Mm.
he, on the outside, he can be coming across as very Venusian,
Mm. Mm.
as you know, um, like people do
Mm.
when, often when they're in the public eye, trying
Yeah,
to be,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Trying to be
And of
pleasant.
course, what does Venus grace you with? It
Yeah.
can grace you with beauty. It can grace you with a loving demeanor. And,
Mm.
I think it's probably graced him with good looks and good fortune in his work and in his bank account and things like that. It hasn't maybe always done so well in personal relationships or in love,
Mm.
matters of a marriage, with the Libra full moon.
Mm.
And maybe there is, that Mars Uranus explosive quality to him, outbursts, sudden outbursts,
Yeah.
you would read that as. Maybe hasn't always been kind
Mm.
to other people that he's working with or living with.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag here with Venus. There's a fair amount of Venus. There's a fair amount of Mars as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious. I wonder, because having Mars in the 12th house would make sense, hidden enemies
Mhm.
for
Yeah,
the situation that's occurred, somebody planting that, on him and sort of,
yeah.
yeah, activating that situation. I mean, I believe people do things like that. That happened to Bruce Lee's son on
Oh, right, right.
he died on the set of a film that he was making because the gun was loaded,
Hmm.
so yeah,
Yeah,
I can be pretty suspicious of people sometimes, I think.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we don't think this had so much to do, this event didn't have to do with him, but the underlying reason why the gun was loaded and who was trying to point the finger at him still is a mystery to be
Yeah.
solved.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And it'll be very interesting to follow that and see what transpires over time. It would be
Yeah,
really amazing to get his time of birth. Have you looked at astro.com for his time of birth?
I did. There is no time of birth provided. This is what the best I could come up with.
Yeah.
So if
Okay.
anybody listening to this happens to know when he was born,
Yeah.
send us a message.
Yeah, absolutely. Because some people can be very resourceful, with things like that. I used to know a woman
Yeah.
who was incredibly resourceful with finding people's times of birth. I don't know how she did it. It was like magic.
Well, and we all have clients that are connected to, you know, people in Hollywood and people in, I do, in
Yeah.
there, and also in Santa Fe in the film business, since I lived in Santa Fe for so long. So like I said, if anyone happens across this and knows
Yeah.
that, let us know, and we'll look at it further to be looked at in the future.
Yeah.
We'll see.
ab-
We'll see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, do you want to share your? We did Lady Gaga in the Aries episode that we did in the spring, but she is a Capricorn evening
Lady
star, not a
Gaga.
morning star. But she's 29 degrees Capricorn. She was one of the first of the Capricorn
Right.
stars born.
Yeah.
In 1986. So as
Right.
an evening star, and so she has. We were talking about though her Aries star power, and in the Aries star point of last year, of
Mm,
this year, earlier this year. But she's had also a lot of the Capricorn
mm,
um, energy there too,
mm.
over here in her. This is a timed birth chart.
Yeah.
So these are the correct houses. This Capricorn star began in her 8th house, but has been slipping now down into her 7th house.
Mm. I love Lady Gaga actually. I think she's a fascinating, human being, celebrity, etc. So I will be watching this closely because that 29 degrees, Pluto's going to obviously be all over that, in a few years, couple of
Right,
years time. Not
right,
well, pretty soon actually. Very soon.
right, right.
So I think, yeah, that's probably going to be very significant for her. But I haven't looked at her chart at all, so I can't really comment on that. But I just couldn't help noting that, yeah, Pluto will be on that soon. Um,
Right,
mm, yeah, and so she's,
exactly.
yeah, and she's another one, I suppose. A young sort of person, if you like, a young sort of celebrity, right? Because I mean, she's
Hmm.
what year is?
Well, born in 1986.
Yeah, yes.
So she's not as young,
No,
but
no,
she's one
yeah,
of the oldest Capricorn. She is one of the oldest Capricorn star points, because the star didn't
yeah,
begin in Capricorn until 1986.
yeah, right.
Um,
Okay,
so
yeah.
she's the first of that whole group of Capricorn stars. But here's another celebrity couple that people might know about. The
Yeah.
siblings, Dakota and Elle Fanning,
Mm.
born 4 years apart. They are both Capricorn star points, and
Oh, wow.
they're called twin stars, though they are not twins. They are twin stars.
Yeah.
But Dakota is an evening star, and Elle is a morning star.
Mm.
And Dakota has her Capricorn Venus star point right at her midheaven, conjunct Neptune and Uranus in Capricorn. So she was a very young child actress,
She was. I
and
remember her
rose to
very well.
fame immediately.
Yeah.
Very, very. When we were talking about Capricorn
Yeah.
star point children being older than their years, being
Yes.
wiser, being more mature, I think
Yes.
we could say that she definitely was that.
100%. 100%. She's incredible. I've seen her act as a 6, 7 year old. She's absolutely incredible. Just
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
right,
Some
right.
real wisdom coming through there actually. Even she even did a funny she appeared in Friends, the sitcom Friends, that
Hmm.
TV show, and she was playing a role where she was a child. Basically, she was only, I don't know, 10 or something, and she was giving advice to Joey, one of the main sort of characters. She was giving him parental advice, like she was being the parent and he was being the child, as it were, right? It was the funniest scene. And I mean, I certainly couldn't regurgitate and repeat it, but it is just so funny because it was her acting, but you can also see that she actually has that wisdom inside her, you know, she's just got that in her, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because it's not only her Capricorn star point at the midheaven here with Neptune and Uranus, which is that in itself, but she is a Pisces sun with the
Exactly.
conjunction to Saturn,
Yeah.
Sun Saturn. So she's a much older
Yeah.
soul. She's a much
Yeah.
older and wiser human being than many, many people her age.
She
You know?
really is. Yeah, she really is. Yeah. That's a great example. Love that one. Mm.
And you can see it in the way she acts too, because there is that more mature. Whereas I see L, is it L or L? L, I think.
I haven't seen Elle in anything actually. I didn't even know she had a sister called Elle. So this is the first.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's a great actor as well, and
Oh,
she also has a Sun Saturn, but she is Aries Sun, and a
right.
Capricorn star point. And she, I think, where did I see it? Was it on Netflix or somewhere else? But there's a kind of a parody series about Catherine the Great, and she stars as Catherine. And,
Right.
it's really, it's a satire on the whole thing. It's done really tongue in cheek, but that's the main thing I've seen her in.
Yeah.
I think that she was in something else also that I saw her in, but that's what I remember her in
Right.
most. But anyway, for our young audience and younger listeners, these are maybe more people they can relate to from this era. I had a lot of Capricorn star points from the last period of Capricorn, but
Mm-hmm.
they're much more politically
Mm-hmm.
oriented, and I'm going to save that conversation for another time.
Sure.
And I think we're coming close to our end today. I just wanted to show, the two books are here that you can look up online. And these are my mythic astrology books that you can also look up.
Mm.
And I'd love for you to show that chart you were talking about of Paris Jackson.
Okay, all right. I won't take up too much time because I know that you need to go, Ariel. So I'll try and
Yeah,
run.
I have to leave like in about 10 minutes at the latest.
Okay, let me just where's my I won't worry about that. Okay, so okay, I haven't done slides, so I apologize. You'll just kind of have to visualize with me. So this is her correct, this is a rectified chart. I've actually rectified her birth time. It's very close to the birth certificate time. Now, the birth certificate time gives her Aries rising, but it gives her the 29th degree actually of Aries rising. Now, if you look at Paris Jackson, she is Taurus rising through and through. There's no question about it. She's so Venusian. She's so pretty. She's very Venusian. Anyway, that's another issue altogether. But I just wanted to mention that because some people will find her time of birth and they'll put in the time that's recorded, for instance, and it'll come up with Aries rising. But this is the rectified time that I'm working with because I've rectified her chart. So if you can imagine now, she's got her Venus star point up here in the 10th house. I'll just grab some.
And it's right at 18 Capricorn, her midheaven.
Yeah.
This one.
Yes, exactly. Now her birth one is 26 degrees of Capricorn. All right, so it sits in here somewhere.
Okay.
She's got a 12 degrees Aries Venus star point, which is conjunct her sun. She's got a 6 degrees Scorpio, so it's in her 7th house. It's another Venus star point. She's got a 20 degrees Gemini one and a 27 degrees Leo one. So this is where all her star points would be situated.
Okay.
Now, at the moment, the what was I her what am I trying to say? Sorry, her Venus star point is 26 degrees of Capricorn, right? So that's in here in the 10th house. And at the moment, transiting Pluto is hitting off that Venus star point, right? So I think this
Right.
is, if you knew the background of this young lady and everything she's gone through, that in summary, what I actually foresee happening to this young woman is I just see her actually reinventing herself in a huge way on a public level, because it's all happening in her 10th house. And she's basically an actor, a singer, a model, and plays several instruments. So she's quite talented. She's got a lot of talent. She's she's made her own music. She's got a YouTube channel. She's released some songs. Most of the songs and the things that she's sort of produced and shared with the public, a lot of it is very dark because it is very associated to her trauma and pain and suffering that she's gone through from a very young age. And, I mean, look at this 12th house. All those bodies that you see here, they're all in the 12th house. that's that's a really heavy 12th house.
Right.
But she's, as I said, she's been on medication, she's tried to commit suicide, there's been many different things. She's also done, a lot of healing. She's really into astrology, she's really into spiritual things. She's actually produced a song called Scorpio Rising. And I thought, I wish I had her email, because then I'd email her and say it should have been Scorpio setting, right? Because she's got Scorpio on the descent. But yeah, she's really into the star. I actually saw a video of her getting an astrology reading from some astrologer. I don't know who this astrologer was. So she's yeah, that Jupiter, South Node, Pallas Athena, all in Pisces. She's brought in, and Pallas Athena is the goddess of wisdom, the daughter of Zeus, Jupiter.
Right.
And it's in Pisces, so she's got foresight and vision. She's very intuitive. She's a very sensitive soul as well, moon in Cancer. She's got all this Aries, and perhaps thank God she has, because I think that's given her the courage to overcome these extreme sort of obstacles that she's had. People might think that her life's easy because her dad, was the greatest superstar on the planet, but and she's going to have money and this and that and the other, but she hasn't dipped into his money. She's lived like a hippie. She's lived in a car. She met some musician, some young guy, and they were just living in like a convy van, like hippies. She's kind of really gone out there in the rawness of life. She hasn't tried to sort of live sheltered and protected, and she's kind of trying to create herself and her own life. She's been very open about her sexuality as well. She's got Venus in Aquarius, and she recently said that she's also, into having relationships with women, for instance, so she's a really fascinating individual and human being. But she's gone through severe trauma and a lot of dark stages and phases in her life. And I'm only summarizing and compressing it at the moment. But I feel that the Pluto on her Venus star point, which is there now, it's activating it already. And because she's 23, I think she's just going to reinvent her whole image, actually. It is Venus, and Venus it's how we look, on the exterior, isn't it? It's our aesthetic appearance, right? And it's her music, it's her public self, because it's all there in the 10th house. And Pluto is the agent, the king of transformation, So I just think this is going to be the next couple of years are just going to be really life-changing for her, actually, in probably a really positive way, I would think, because it's the Venus star point, you know. So,
Yeah.
and just very quickly, relative to her dad's passing, and the star points, I'll tell you what's really interesting, Ariel, and everyone else who's listening, of course. So her dad passed in 2009, and the her her Venus star point, her Aries Venus star point um, from 12 degrees had gotten to 7 degrees. So it was exactly trine her Pluto, right,
Mm-hmm.
at the time of her father's death. Now, whilst a trine is not, you know, an aspect that we would consider as a cataclysmic, you know, sort of vibration, it is Pluto and it is in the eighth. And um the sun in, oh, actually I'll get to that in a minute because that's the progress chart. But a couple of other interesting things. Transiting Neptune at the time of her father's death was opposite her, let me get my arrow. So I'm going to have a few arrows here. She's got a Leo VSP in this house here, in the 5th house at 27 degrees. So when her father died, transiting Neptune was opposite that VSP. Now, the reason I think that's significant is because Leo is the sign of the father. Neptune is transcendence. It was an opposition, so it has activated that Venus star point. Also, transiting Jupiter was opposite her Leo VSP. And I think that's significant because what I've understood about Jupiter is that Jupiter is a huge significator when it comes to people leaving their body. It is actually, yeah, because it's you know, it's transitioning into the other world, you know. It's how can I put it? I've just lost the words.
The journey, the long distance journey, and that Jupiter is about, and Pluto into the other world. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the word that I was trying to remember, which I just did, is release. Jupiter releases us, it frees us up.
Yeah. Right.
So Jupiter is often a significator in the situation where a person dies. And that was the case when my father left as well. Jupiter was a huge significator in my own chart, actually, reflecting my father's transcendence. So here it is again, opposite her Leo VSP. Leo is the father. So I thought that was an important connection. So outside of the transiting planets relative to her VSPs, that's kind of all I got. But then her secondary progress chart, which I would like to show because it's important, if I can remember how to, I might just have to do it like this. Sorry, I just lost a little button there. Okay, so I'll just be very quick with this, but this is extremely important and fascinating. So this is the secondary progress chart, not as per how Solarfire calculates it. I've got my own unique method that my mentor has taught me. So the angles are the exact correct angles that correspond to the age that she was at the time of her father's death. Solarfire will give you different degrees on those angles. You can look at that yourselves, guys, if you're interested. Okay, so here's what's happening. The Saturn series sun have all kind of grouped up together, right? So from the time of her birth, everything's moved forward X amount of years to 2009, right? She was only 11, 12 years old when her father died. So this is 11, 12 years later. These planets have progressed that far forward. Now, what is really interesting is that there's a Saturn-Sun conjunction here. Now, it is separating because the Sun has already passed Saturn. So technically, when you look at that as a secondary progression, you would say to yourself, well, that was exact around about a year before this time, right? And you'd probably just leave it at that. But what's actually happening here is that Ceres, what is it? Let me just. Ceres is at the midpoint of the Sun Saturn conjunction. Now, Ceres is about loss, Saturn is about separation, and the Sun is, of course, the father. So this is just a secondary progression mirroring the loss, the transcendence of her father, because this is her chart, not his. This is her chart reflecting her experience about her father. And the other thing that's really important about this is that Saturn, of course, rules her MC, which is the parental axis anyway. In addition to that, she was in her 12th house. Let me think, her perfected 12th house for the year that her father died. And again, the reason that's significant is because it's ruled by Mars, and Mars is in her 12th. So there were, a few different layers of things going on that all really reflect, the transition of her father. So I just wanted to kind of show that. But more than anything, I was more interested in, just her natal chart, and particularly with the Capricorn Venus star point, which hers is 26 degrees, and Pluto being all over it. I think she's going to find just a totally new Paris Jackson within herself, just an absolute rebirth.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would doubly emphasize that point by sharing that the Capricorn star point, this is the final 18-degree star point of Capricorn. It will move back to 16 for the next time it comes into Capricorn. So it's actually changing houses here. It's been in her 10th house her whole life so far, and now it's moving into her 9th house. And this angle over here, so that's one set of angles, 18 Capricorn-Cancer. The other set of angles, 0 Taurus Scorpio, is that, we're going to get the final Scorpio star point degree in 2026. So it's hovering past, going from her 7th down to her 6th. So going from 2 cardinal houses, the 10th and the 7th, moving into the 9th and the 6th, I think she's really going to come into her own, it's going to develop further her own philosophy and beliefs. 9th house.
Yes.
And 6th house, her own sort of health, her well-being, her creative energy into her work.
Yeah, and her craft as well, because she's very talented, and I think she'll find she'll
perfecting
really
her craft.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So she's going to be one to watch, I think, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. All right. I think we've sort of kind of come to a point where we can start to close. Yes, I think, because you needed to go, I think.
I do. Yeah. Sorry about that. We could go on forever, but we've gone on. We may be stretching the attention span of our listeners even at this length now. So hopefully we haven't, and that you've been able to take all of this in.
Yeah, and they can pause and watch half now and half later, and so that's not a problem. Yeah, but Ariel, thank you so much for your beautiful wisdom and your beautiful presence and time with us today, and sharing with us again. It's been, really lovely to have you back, and I hope to have you back every Venus star point, actually. So that's my mission with you. And
I know I'm the list is growing of people's YouTube channels and podcasts that want me on every time Venus does a star point. So
Aries first.
It's like I'm booking them 9 months ahead right now.
And that's great. That's wonderful for you, and you deserve that exposure, and this is, secondary progressed Jupiter, your secondary progressed Jupiter going direct. I think, this is a big part of it as well. But don't forget me, because I'm Aries, and Aries is always first.
I will not forget you because you are such a devoted Venus star point lady, and you really reflect Venus in so many ways. So I'm very happy to be with you, and
Thank you.
always am. And our conversations are so rich and enjoyable for me. So
Yeah.
don't worry about that. Now you've got to get yourself to Greece and
Yes,
come over here, and we'll do something from here
that'll
at
be
some point.
amazing. That would be
Yeah,
absolutely amazing. And it will happen. It will happen.
it will happen at the right time. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much again. And to our audience, I say happy Venus cycle into this new cycle, and happy Venus retrograde in Capricorn. May it bring you all that you
Yeah.
desire.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also about just finally, it's also about getting real, right? About what we really want to invest, our sort of our love into as well. Because Saturn is that real sort of energy, isn't it? It's like get real
Yeah.
about things. So a little bit of that too.
Well, yeah, you may be in a relationship that has, certain conditions that are imposed on you, or you may not be in a relationship at all. But if you are in a relationship, Saturn and Pluto's influence for this Venus star cycle is just that. It is getting real. It is getting more to the point of what's important for you. And
Yeah.
Saturn's always about setting boundaries, and but Pluto is also about making changes. Making important changes that you need to make to make it work on both parts.
Yeah.
Um, it can be a time of loss where we're grieving somebody's important that has passed out of our lives because of that energy between those two planets. But however it affects you, um, it's it's a really important time for you to get into the inside of yourself and to really, what's important for you, what's your value system about, where have you placed, what have you invested in, what have you placed as important in your life, and how is that um, coming back to you? How does that seem to be feeding you? Because the Venus star cycle is a constant feeding
Mm.
from one energy to the next. Are we being fed? Are you feeding that?
Yeah.
Etc.
Yeah.
That's another subject for another time. I think
Yeah.
probably once the Libra star point begins, I'll be focusing more on interrelationships of the Venus star and how certain star points feed the other. Um, I've
Mm.
got, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah,
And
I'd
information
definitely
comes in.
be very interested in participating in like bringing that together. Yeah, definitely. Because
Mhm.
I've got a Libra midheaven and strong Venus, both in star point and natally. So, and I was
Mhm.
a relationship counselor. So the whole Venus relationship thing and all of that is, up my alley. Yeah. So I would love
Okay,
to. Yeah.
very good, very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Right.
very nice to be with you again, and I'm
You
going to
too,
be on
Ariel.
my way
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And
Can you hold on for 1 minute while I just end it?
sure, sure.
Okay. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed our beautiful space that Ariel and myself shared today, and the offerings that we had, and hoping that you make the most of the information we shared. Don't feel afraid or shy to contact Ariel for any questions you may have about her books or her Venus Star Point readings, or other readings that she does. And also you can contact me as well for the different styles and work that I do. And also just leave your beautiful comments and questions below. And I look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you so much, Ariel. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.